Hello and welcome back to Crushing Comics, the show where I fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. We're going to go straight to the shelf. We've filled up 6 blocks now, but that means we still have 14 left to go. Let's open up this sucker. So, something that's really interesting about collecting anything is the time that it takes, right? I mean, yeah, okay, duh, it takes time to do something, but, I mean, let's say you're really into playing pool, right? Which I do enjoy playing pool. Not much of a shark, but my family did have a pool table when I was growing up. You think you just have it in your basement, and it's there, and you play it occasionally. But you're putting in that time to play it, you're putting in the time to upkeep it, you're putting up the time, sometimes you've got to go and, chalk your pool cues, and sometimes you've got to, carefully vacuum the felt of the table. And the pastime that was the thing that you were doing just for fun starts to take up time in your life other than just the time that's the fun time. And maybe playing pool isn't the best example. I mean, a swimming pool is a good example, right? You have it for the swimming and the exercise and the parties, but then you've got to do all this maintenance of the pool. And I think, especially if you're somebody young, or if you didn't grow up with whatever that thing was in your life, you don't realize that. And I was talking to a friend of mine who had bought a house, a really beautiful house in New Jersey, and had a pool, and it looked like kind of a little swampy because they hadn't cleaned it yet. And I was like, wow, don't you want to swim in the pool every day? It's summer, it's hot. And my friend said to me, well, I just don't know if I want to make the time to upkeep it enough to be able to swim in it regularly right now. Clearly they were going to eventually because they bought a house with a pool. But I think that people sometimes lose sight of that when you are like, I'm going to be really into whatever this thing is. There's always a time component. Nothing is so simple as just having it, right? You've got to dust it, find the space for it, find the time to admire it. And I think that people like me, who are very consumerist kind of people, who are like, I want to have all this stuff, pools and pool tables and comic books and guitars, sometimes underestimate that you're tithing out a little piece of your life to that stuff that you're going to take to upkeep it. And for me, I've made it fun because I'm unwrapping these books on camera. But, you can't have everything. I mean, even if you're some crazy super rich superstar who doesn't have to work at all and just has time to spend time with your stuff, you can't just be Scrooge McDuck and roll around in the pile of your stuff all the time. You've got meals to eat and people to see and, sunlight to absorb through your skin. Ooh, I knew we were eventually going to get one of these. So, this is Sandman Absolute, number 3. This is our first Absolute that we've unwrapped, even though I thought the Hellboy was Absolute. Now we can finally do our head-to-head to see just how close the library editions are in size to the Absolutes. Pretty close. The Absolutes are about ½ an inch bigger, but then they also have the slipcase. So, Absolutes are just a gorgeous format. People have their occasional qualms with omnibuses, and, they don't like the dust jacket, the underneath cover printing isn't cool, the binding, blah, blah. Absolutes tend to be pretty well considered in terms of those factors. People tend to really like them and don't have as many complaints. Now, there's occasionally a complaint. I'll get to that whenever we open Sandman Volume 2, but I mean, just look at this thing. As an artifact, it's just gorgeous. It has a ribbon to mark the pages. And I've opened this before, so I'm not going to do the whole relaxing the book thing. And the art is just huge. Even an inch extra makes a difference in art because you have to think that it's scaling up. It's not like just making a book an inch taller gets you a whole extra inch of art. It's changing the overall percentage of how big the book might be. And so even that ½ inch addition from the Hellboys means the art gets even bigger. Sandman, I've not read this deeply into Sandman, I will readily admit. I've only read the first 2 Absolutes. But, Sandman is a beautiful thing because it's an example of Gaiman playing on the fringe of the DC universe. There's never really a lot of hints that this is in the DC world. Every so often, there'll be a little nod, and at the end, there's a nod at the wake, the final story. But Gaiman takes Sandman, which previously had been a heroic character in the Golden Age, and turns him into something totally else, and does it with an arc. And that's what's really important. There had been a lot of big-name creators doing Vertigo Alan Moore on Swamp Thing, Grant Morrison on Animal Man, a whole host of people on Constantine, Hellblazer, but none of them doing like kind of a single self-contained story that has beats that arc over a run and come to a resolution the way that Sandman did. And this becomes, in a lot of ways, the roadmap for a lot of modern authors who are doing their own indie work and are trying to like cross an arc and come to an end. These books are, look, there's a lot of ways to collect Sandman. There's a really nice box set of trade paperbacks, and if you don't need like this outrageously huge bookshelf thing, you should get those. But these are neat because they have a lot of cool extras in them. They have like a lot of galleries and let's see, book, you know, illustrations of designs for bookends, textless Dave McKean covers and other artwork. So, and then also some scripts and things in the back. So they're really a beautiful format. And, you know, again, going to that theme of when you were just collecting comic books, it was hard to lay hands on these things, and that's why collected editions and now digital are so great. When I decided, hey, I finally want to read and own Sandman, it was just so cool to be able to pick up these editions and read them. And Sandman is something that certainly deserves this beauty. I mean, if you look at some modern DC stuff that gets into Absolute, it's like, that could have just been an omnibus, especially because the Absolutes don't tend to be as long as omnibuses. So it's like, wouldn't you rather just throw that whole run to an omnibus? Do we really need 2 Absolutes? But some things have like the scope and the grandeur that they really deserve Absolute treatment, and Sandman does. You can get it in 2 omnibuses, actually, among many other formats. But these are just kind of like the pinup line. You even just look at this book spine. It has these like bumped out parts, and it's really just a phenomenal book. So I'll probably have a little bit more about Sandman to say as we open 1 and 2, and maybe even 4, but this is kind of a little bit my blind spot in terms of Sandman. And so that's all I really have to say about it. Quick episode. We're going to shelve it up here for now. Here's the ceremonial shelving of Sandman Volume 3. Tune in next time for more unwrapping of books as we press forward to the halfway point of unpacking the shelf here on Crushing Comics.